What does it mean to remember who we truly are?
Wow, great question. I personally feel for me, a remembrance of myself is really being able to meet the deepest parts of myself with love and with acceptance. So I only truly believe that we actually liberate ourselves and move into a true space of freedom when we're able to meet those parts of ourselves that we so often hide. So it can come through many ways, right? Liberation, it can come through learning about your birth chart and learning about what that holds and the beauty and the magic that holds. But also, it can come through things like shadow work, for example, where you look at what parts of your ego are keeping you safe and how you can remove that to then come back into a space of self.
I heard you also say that there was always this part of you that wanted to be free.
Mhm.
What does it actually mean to be free?
I think I always used to believe and feel that freedom came from all of these external things that we so often seek or that our ego seeks. So the money, the job, the car, the house. And recently, I could catch myself coming into those moments again with my ego where I was like, if I made this bit of money, I'd feel really good. And then I caught myself and I was like, actually, no, the true meaning of freedom to me is being able to talk, for example, like this openly and vulnerably about the experiences that I've been through, and also those deep, dark parts of me that I've always suppressed and haven't wanted to meet. So, for example, when you move through an experience as a human, like heartbreak, and you might feel shame around that. And so often we suppress that and we push it down. But actually, it's really about meeting and accepting and loving those parts of ourselves to bring us into a state of freedom and liberation so we can live as whole and understand that everyone else is also exactly the same. So we all have those light and dark parts. It's just coming into acceptance of that. So when you're able to admit that to yourself, to me, that's what kind of blew my soul open. And I was like, wow, I actually feel liberated and free.
At what point in your journey did you become a breathwork facilitator?
Mm. So it was after I took my first breathwork session on the retreat, and I was doing breathwork on a more regular basis then. And it was really healing me to the point where now, when I think back to the experience with PTSD, there is no tension in my body. And breathwork really helped me release that on a somatic level and on a mindset level.
Mm.
And when I realized how powerful it was, I was like, I have to share this medicine. I have to share this medicine with everybody else because I knew that there were people around me that were suffering, that were moving through things like PTSD, sexual trauma, trauma with their parents. So many people that I knew were going through that. And I was like, if they could try breathwork, how would they feel? So that was my path into facilitation.
Mm. If people understood what breathing actually does on a fundamental level,
Mm.
would we all practice it every day?
I would like to think so as a facilitator. I think the beauty about breathwork is that it's this amazing mix of science and spirituality. So we're able to access different levels of the divine. There's quite often times in my sessions where people will meet loved ones that have passed away and they have messages for them and they leave with this beautiful feeling of comfort and joy and presence for life and for gratitude for life that these people have met them in the void and they're able to feel somewhat whole again from that. But on a scientific level, obviously, there's so many benefits to a practice as well, like oxygenating our blood. We can increase our creativity by up to 500%. So if you work in creative or you're an artist, again, it's a really beautiful practice to build in. and we can become more emotionally and self-aware, which is essentially what helps us form a new earth movement. When we're able to really all become aware of our emotions and emotional regulation, it does make the world a better place.
Mm. What do you think makes you different in the way of you being so well able to hold safe space for people and making them feel safe?
Mm.
Like your presence and your energy is one thing, but I'm sure there's other aspects when it comes to tapping into source or any kind of like kundalini related uh, abilities. How would you describe that part of it?
I think one thing I've noticed is the relatability side of things. So I always share my story about PTSD and where I came to with that. And the vulnerability around that allows for other people to open up and know that it's a safe space for them to be able to share as well. I also think as well that I always enter a space with no judgment. So, and I set the tone of that at the start of a session. So I know that naturally as humans, we can judge others. It's not within everybody's nature to enter into a space and immediately have no judgment. So I always set the tone that people will be releasing. And if they are, then it's really important that in the space you send them love and not judgment, because you're only just then going to fill their energy body with judgment, right?
Yeah.
So that would be the second thing. And the third, I feel like when I open up my channel, there are a lot of important practices that I've learned along the way that only open me up to white light and the purest of light. And admittedly, when I first went into being a facilitator, I was quite naive. I it was doing protection prayers, but they definitely could have been stronger. And I think now the energy that I set around this space is that of pure consciousness, pure divine light. And I specifically say that I'm not inviting any negative forces into the space of healing. And it's made a huge impact on my sessions as well. And I think keeping those sessions intimate for me is also important as well. So everybody's got that safe, energetic care and attention that they need.
What are some of your favorite daily breathwork practices for different purposes? And I noted a few down here that I gotten from your social medias and researching about you. Conscious connected breathing in the morning, breath of fire for breathing before the gym, heart coherence breathing, and then there was also one that I thought was fascinating. Someone had a chest infection, and it was called Nadi Shodhana, alternate nostril breathing.
Mm.
Maybe you can expand on a few of those or any others that I wasn't mentioning.
Yeah, so the Nadi Shandana one is my favorite. It's ultimately, we have two main energy channels in our body. So we've got the masculine and the feminine, the sun and the moon, and the feminine being on the left and the masculine on the right. And quite often when we wake up in the morning, we're out of balance. So there's a dominant one which is taken over. So the alternate nostril breathing actually allows for us to bring ourselves back into balance. And it's super simple practice and it can be done for about 10 minutes. But it's a practice that I learned in India, and it's rooted in pranayama and it's rooted in what the gurus teach. And for me, it's so simple but so impactful. So that's one of my favorites that I often do. I don't do breath of fire as much now, but for anyone who is looking for a quick energy boost or also just for an amazing detoxification of their body, you can do the breath of fire. And it's very quick exhales through the nose. And it's really good for actually detoxifying your lungs as well. So if you're suffering from, like a chest infection, or if you're feeling as though you just need like a little bit more power in the morning, again, that's a really beautiful pranayama practice from India that I learned as well.
Mm.
The conscious connected, I love to do only for 15 minutes. So I don't do a 40-minute practice in the morning because quite often I think you really have to prepare yourself and bring yourself into that state of knowing that you're going into a breathwork practice. So quite often in the morning, I have things to do during the day. So I like to do that practice to regulate my nervous system. But for the whole kind of journey and experience, I think it's really important to take time, for example, like 40 minutes out of your day when you feel ready for that. And it's not, getting up and essentially going to work or getting on with your day. And that's kind of how I blend that together now. So I wouldn't say the 40 minutes is for me necessarily in the morning, but definitely 15 of that really helps.
What is shadow work?
Yeah. So shadow work is a concept that was developed by Carl Jung. And it's really about meeting the deepest and darkest parts of yourself and coming into acceptance of those. So, for example, you know, quite often a lot of us have this idea of perfectionism, right? That we need to be perfect to be accepted, that we are striving for almost an impossible goal. Like perfectionism doesn't exist, it's an illusion because we're trying to reach this goal that we're then perpetuating the cycle of perfectionism. So it's really about meeting the parts of ourselves where we know that the ego has taken over and our soul is starting to be like, hey, like, this isn't me. Like, this is the ego. So, speaking openly and vulnerable as well about the darkest parts of you that you might not like. So, we might have been through heartbreak, we might have a lot of shame around that, but ultimately it's coming into releasing that shame and then accepting the part that we played in that heartbreak, for example. So, not blaming and shaming other people for essentially what our actions have been at that time and making friends with that version of ourselves as well.
Let's talk about astrological birth charts. How do you work with astrology on a deeper level? And are you planning your life around the energy of the moon for greater alignment?
Mm. So, I don't necessarily rigidly stick to astrology in a way that I feel like I have to follow it very set, but I do look at the influences of what is happening in the cosmos for things like business and for manifestation. So I usually work with people on the basis of understanding their birth chart on a number of different levels where I'm able to explain to them how they like to be loved, what their Venus placement means in terms of a partner that they might be looking for, who's good for them or who could be good for them. Also, looking at their life's purpose, so looking at their North Node and helping them understand how they can embody their life's purpose more in this lifetime. And also looking at their limiting beliefs in a chart as well. So you're able to see where your biggest wounds are. And when I learned that myself, I was like, wow, things make so much sense. Like, I actually feel seen here, like just from my birth chart. So that's actually why I then moved into the path of astrology. It was from my own journey, similar to the breath work, which is why I also believe in it so much. But there's a number of different things that we can learn from looking at what influences were there from the planets when we were brought into this world.